Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to look at the 2 to 4 player game Photosynthesis Under the Moonlight by Blue Orange Games. Now, let's go ahead down to the table. I'm going to give you a general overview of this game, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my thoughts on this expansion. So to start the game, you're going to shuffle all these animal tiles and give 2 to each player, and they're going to pick their animal, and then they're going to put their lunar tracker on 2. All right, and then I'm going to take this little animal meeple, and starting with the right of the first player going counterclockwise, each player is going to place their animal in one of the 3 spaces. Okay, so this, we'll go ahead and start there, start here. This is going to be the, let's say, initial setup for it. Other than in photosynthesis, you would first put out, each player would put out their starting trees, so we're not going to have them out. But anyway, the moon each round is going to move 5 spaces, and the tracker token. So basically what you're going to do is it moves in between 2 of these things, so it has to be in between these, and it's going to move 5 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you know where it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and basically you're moving this guy, so you know where this one's going to be. You move the moon here, and then this guy moves up 5. So that's basically what the tracker token is to do, to make it really easy for moon movement. Now, during the photosynthesis phase, where you collect the light from the sun, you will collect lunar points. You will receive 1 lunar point if the moon is a half moon, or 2 lunar points if the moon is a full moon. The moon lights up 2 paths on the track, and they're actually like, so I'm placing, the moon, so right here is going to light up 2 tracks. So it's going to be this track and this track. Now, it is important to note that tree placement on the board doesn't matter for blocking lunar light, with the exception of the great tree, but we haven't got to that yet. But the great tree will block lunar light, just remember, but other trees do not. And then once you gain, so let's say, just for purposes of the game, let's say that the moon was going to hit my player. So let's say I was here. So I would gain lunar points, and I would track the lunar points on this board right here. And the next thing is, during the life cycle phase and during photosynthesis, the player can move their animal to anticipate the moon movements, which you can use the moon tracker to try to figure that out, which is another benefit of having that there. Moving an animal, animals can be moved to 1 adjacent space in any direction. They can move to a space containing a tree or a seed, but they can never move to a space containing another animal, a moonstone, or the great elder tree. And the moonstone and the great elder tree are 2 other expansions that are in this. Animals all have abilities, and each animal has 1 or several varying abilities that require lunar points to be activated. To activate abilities, players must spend as many lunar points as required. If a player does not have enough points, then they obviously can't activate the ability. So for animal abilities, you would actually look at the instruction manual, and the instruction manual has them all listed in here. So that is the one thing I was a little off on the game, is I wish that they have all the negative space on here, that they potentially could have listed the abilities on it, which would have been very helpful instead of having to pass this little pamphlet around. But that is my one negative on the game. Overall, excellent, but I just wanted to point that out, that you need to look in here to get your abilities. And it sort of helps trying to memorize your abilities on here, but again, this is going to be a lot of passing of the manual to see your abilities on here. And all the different abilities can give you different advantages during the game, and I'll let you look at the instruction manual itself to see what they are when you get the game, but in general, they're all really cool. They all do really neat things. So that is a really, really brief overview of the first module, or actually the core module to the game, which is the moon and the forest animals. There's 2 optional modules that you could also do. And we'll talk about the Great Elder Tree first. And the Great Elder Tree is this big tree that you get in the expansion. Is a tree that you can place down in the beginning of the game, and wherever this gets placed by the player, it's going to block all the light and moonlight. So it is an additional thing that you're going to have to play around. The flavor for it is the Great Elder Tree is the soul of the forest. The ancient massive tree casts a shadow onto all trees and animals on the sides opposite the sign and the moon. So this is just basically a module where we're going to have a tree that is going to block, again, the light and the moonlight. So you have to work around it, and your strategy has to include that. So it's pretty neat modules, very simple. I didn't see it as a big deal just to throw in. And the last module on the game, and again, this is just briefly, there's lots of little things you're going to have to look up for the rules, but this is just a brief overview of the rules of the game. The last one is the moonstones, and the moonstones are these little trees that you get with the game. Well, I don't know if they're trees or little tiny eggs or something, but these guys, wherever they get placed, they'll cast moonlight all around it. So what they do is, and again, these don't belong to any particular player, neither does the Great Elder Tree, but, and they also can't be harvested or picked or any of that fun stuff. But the small trees cast a shadow onto one space on the side opposite of the sun. So if the sun's here, they're going to cast lunar light there. Okay? During the photosynthesis phase, all animals located on the space adjacent to the shining moonstone receive lunar points. So if the moon does not shine directly onto these animals, where you're 1 to 2 points depending on the side of the moon, they can also get a 1 point for the lunar tree. So these just add another way of getting lunar points throughout the game. So they all sort of work together. To start out, I would suggest that you play the core module first, the moon and the forest animals, and then throw in the other two afterwards. It's not a really big deal to have all three going together. You can actually take the Great Elder Tree one, and you can play it just by itself. So if you wanted to have, didn't want to deal with the lunar points necessarily during the game, you could just use the Elder Tree and have, in the normal game of photosynthesis, having to work around this giant tree in the middle or wherever they get placed in the board. So that is a super brief overview of the game. It's not really meant to be a rules overview, or rules, but just an overview of what you get with the 3 different expansions. Let's go ahead back up to the table, and I'll give you my final thoughts on this expansion. So photosynthesis under the Moonlight gives a lot of extra layers to photosynthesis. Now, it doesn't actually change the core idea of photosynthesis, which is really good, where you're still fighting in this abstract game to watch the movement of the sun, and now you're watching the moon go through and its light. So it adds more to the strategy of like blocking other players and trees and from collecting light or moonlight and doing stuff like that. So it does add a lot to the game. I like it, and it has 3 different the 3 different modules are really good. I sort of think that playing all 3 together is the best, but you probably want to start off with doing them each individually and then putting them together. The Great Elder Tree is really cool because it adds this big tree that casts shadow everywhere, and you have to work around it in the game. So if you really like photosynthesis, this is a no-brainer. Just get it. It's a great expansion for that. If you don't like photosynthesis, this won't change your mind. So don't look for it to do that. But otherwise, if you like photosynthesis and you wanted a little bit more, this is the expansion for you. So for me, I really like this. I will probably always include it in the photosynthesis games, and it's just great. So that was Photosynthesis Under the Moonlight. Thank you for watching.